Hi, my name is Ray. Welcome back to another episode of Ray's Economics Clue Book. Today, we'll be expanding our lessons upon the ADS model by introducing our AD curve. So when we talk about aggregate demand curve, we talk about overall demand for an entire macroeconomy for a nation as a whole. So we look at the two axes. We have real GDP, or total actual output in the nation, and we have the general price level, or basically just the general overall price level of all goods and services in the nation. And so we see here, obviously, the aggregate demand is sloping down. Now, this seems pretty intuitive, but there are also three main reasons as to why the aggregate demand curve in a macroeconomy is sloped downwards, meaning that as price decreases, the quantity demanded goes up, and as price increases, quantity demanded decreases. The first reason why we have this negative slope effect of aggregate demand is because of Pigot's wealth effect, which states that as price goes down, or converse, the price goes down, the real purchasing power of the capital of a household per se increases, and of course this results in consumer spending increasing as the household has more real purchasing power. And of course the opposite is true if the price level increases. The second we see here is the interest rate effect. Interest rate effect states as price increases, then of course demand for money increases because you need more money to meet up with the price level increasing. This results in interest rate increasing, for perhaps because more bonds are sold from households to raise capital, raise cash, or other things similarly happening that causes the interest rate to eventually increase. And as interest rates increase, we obviously can conclude that consumer spending, but more importantly, investment spending, which plays into aggregate demand, decreases. So this affects the C and the I in our aggregate demand formula. Our aggregate demand formula, of course, aggregate demand equals total consumer spending plus total investment spending plus total government spending plus our net exports, which are our exports minus our imports. So interest rate effect, of course, if price goes down, the opposite is true, money demand goes down, etc. And the third main reason why we have a negative aggregate demand slope is because of our international trade effect, which states as price goes down, our exports go up and our imports go down, which means our net exports increase. This is because our goods, relatively compared to other countries, become cheaper, and goods of other countries, relatively speaking to ours, become more expensive because our price level is decreasing compared to theirs. And therefore, our exports go up because they have more quantity demanded of our goods, and our imports go down. And of course the opposite is true once again if price increases. The second part of the equation is a shift of the aggregate demand curve. Now, shifts of the aggregate demand curve are caused by external factors, not related to price level. The shift along the aggregate demand curve is caused by price level mainly. So what causes the aggregate demand curve to shift right? This means if the aggregate demand curve shifts right, this means that at every price level, quantity demanded increases from the old aggregate demand curve. And it shifts right due to good expectations by consumers, which of course increases consumer spending and consumer confidence, expansionary government policy, which would increase government spending and also perhaps decrease household taxes, which of course increases consumer spending, lower interest rates by the Fed, which of course will increase consumer and investment spending, and more exports perhaps due to policy or just naturally speaking. But more exports, of course, increases our net exports, which shifts our aggregate demand to the right. So of course we can see that expansionary fiscal policy and expansionary monetary policy by the Fed, it can shift our aggregate demand curve right. And conversely, bad expectations by consumers, contractionary fiscal policy or contractionary monetary policy from the Fed, and less exports or more imports perhaps due to government policy, can shift our aggregate demand curve to the left, which means that less quantity is demanded at each price level compared to the old aggregate demand curve. So for a quick review, basically, our aggregate demand shifts due to external factors, but our aggregate demand shifts along the curve due to internal factors, mainly the price level. However, if it's not related to price level, that means it will increase or decrease quantity demanded at each possible price level, which creates a new aggregate demand curve that shifts from the old aggregate demand curve. And of course, these shifts we just talked about come from changes in expectations, changes in wealth, changes in our fiscal and monetary policy, and basically anything that affects AD, CGI, or X, net exports, can either shift along, explain why the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping, explain shifts along the aggregate demand curve, but most importantly, it explains what can shift the aggregate demand curve left or right. For instance, one example that a lot of people are often confused on is changing the inventory. Let's say a company has too much inventory and now produces because of perhaps low sales, and now they plan to produce less inventory for the next month or so. Their plan to produce less inventory right now basically decreases their investment spending, because inventory is part of their investment spending. So as they decrease inventory and expectations for lower future sales, they decrease investment spending right now, which causes their AD to shift left as I decreases. So, and of course, the opposite is true if they increase their investment spending due to high forecasted sales. So, a final clue is just important to note that the AD curve shifts to left and right due to external factors. The AD curve slides up and down. We see the price quantity perhaps slide up and down along the AD curve due to just pure price level fluctuations. And so that's the main difference you have to memorize, fundamentally speaking, with the AD curve. So thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.